and this is Lit Happens, your celebration of the literary arts here in Saskatchewan. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome Amy Morris. Amy is a cancer pharmacist and cancer survivor, and she's from here in Saskatoon. Now, Amy's book is called Survivor. Amy, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I'm really interested in this book. It's quite unique.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in your work as well, and I kind of am guessing that your work as an oncology pharmacist and your work on the book are connected in some way.
Oh, definitely. So I worked as a cancer pharmacist right as soon as I finished my undergraduate degree in pharmacy. And then I went on to specialize, so I actually have my doctorate focused in cancer pharmacy. And so I worked for a couple of years, and then myself I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And so during that whole process, you really get a much better appreciation of the patient side of things, of the survivor side of things. So I wanted to showcase that. And as a young cancer survivor, which is getting to be more and more of us, unfortunately, I knew that this group of people had a very unique story. So we often think about cancer survivors or people with cancer as being older. Maybe their children are grown or they're retired. But this group of survivors are younger females, so they worry about their newly bought house, their mortgage, maybe who's going to take care of their children. So their stories are unique and different, and I wanted to showcase them here.
So how is it that you found these young women to be part of this project?
Yeah, so that's actually an interesting story as well. When I was going through my own chemotherapy treatments, I made the choice to live stream my chemotherapy. So I put my chemotherapy on Facebook Live, and I answered questions as I was being treated myself. I guess in retrospect, it seems kind of like a risky move, but in the moment, it seemed so natural. I'd always worked in the area, so I wanted to continue to educate people and show them what cancer's really like, what chemo's really like, because then all of a sudden it becomes a little less scary once you show people how it's actually done. So through that process of live streaming my chemo, I developed a group of cancer people battling cancer or cancer survivors that followed along. And so I just put out a call to my social media group, this community that I had developed, and found the survivors through there.
And when you found them and you met them, so
Yeah.
what was the process what was your process as you collected these stories?
Yeah, so most of the women we met either just in local places around the city, so places that lended itself to good photos usually as well. And it's just a casual conversation. I wanted to know what they feared the most, what was the most unexpected thing that happened. And you find that even though they all share the same diagnosis of cancer, all their cancers are so different and all their stories and perspectives are so different that you don't have to dig around very long before something comes out that's really unique in them.
And I suppose what you've got very short vignettes. They're very short little bits and little gems that you've gleaned from that. And I suppose that each of these stories could fill a novel, could fill a full memoir. So what was it like to choose just a few short lines to help tell a story?
Yeah, it's probably the most challenging part of the whole thing, because you want to be able to tell everything, and everything they share is so remarkable. But what I tried to do is, certainly when you interview several survivors, there are themes that come out, and I wanted to touch on some very important themes that came out. So I wanted to make sure those were covered. And then I also wanted to make sure that there were stories that would relate not only to cancer survivors and people battling cancer, but the general public too. These stories are inspiring and enlightening and inspirational, so I wanted to make sure I showcased that aspect of cancer as well.
And we're all touched by cancer. In fact, one of the women in this book is a cousin of mine who passed away last fall. So it's personal as well to see that, to appreciate that it's important for us to keep those stories, and so to read those stories that you've collected is I think it's really important for us.
Yeah, I think it's really it's eye-opening, right? So it's really showing these women that even though they've been faced with this adversity, they live their lives so gracefully through it. In the case of your cousin, who then eventually passed away, even up into her last days, you can see from the people she touched that she lived her life exactly as she wanted to. And then that aspect is something that I feel like everyone can find so inspiring.
Yeah. Well, and she was inspiring. She instead of just laying down, she decided to be a country music star.
Yes,
so.
yeah. There's a story to tell there, right? Yeah.
But every story, and you talk about that thread that sort of connects people. But I think one of the beauties of this is that every story is fully unique and fully inspiring in its own way.
And I think that's what people don't realize, is that we think of cancer as one disease, but it's not. It's got some commonalities through it, but every type of diagnosis is unique. Like my experience as an ovarian survivor would be very, very different than someone who maybe had Hodgkin's lymphoma or had breast cancer even. So even though we're under the same umbrella, it's just so unique. Yeah.
And some of the stories are those things that we think of as women's cancer, the parts of the body that are like ovarian cancer, like breast cancer, but you cover many other cancers.
Oh, definitely.
And cancers that have emerged in people's lives at different ages and where they are in their journey as someone who's continues to live on.
Yeah, for sure. We have one woman in the book who was diagnosed as a teenager, and so then seeing the impact that had on her as a developing young adult, but then also the impact it has on her parents and her family, right? So, and then we go to kind of the opposite end. I think maybe the oldest woman in the book is around 45 or so, and we see the impact it has on her and her husband, as well as her now university-age daughters. And so you can really see the range there.
And I guess one of the things, when I see these types of collections of stories, I think about how important it is to connect and to listen to the stories. And so when you think about young women who are in that time when they're maybe going through chemotherapy, do you think that they are open at that time to want to share their story with their friends and family members? Sometimes we don't know what questions we're allowed to ask.
Oh, exactly. It really ranges, and I find this with survivors too. It really ranges on the individual and where they are in their journey as well. And I can certainly respect both ends of the spectrum. Obviously, I was very open throughout my entire process, but I know some who have been quite closed off because they're not sure what the future holds. They're worried about the ramifications on their career if they share their diagnosis, which is understandable. I always say from a friend or family perspective, though, I mean, if you're coming at it with an open heart and with kindness, you're not going to be wrong. So I always encourage people to say something to people who are going through treatment rather than just pretend nothing's happening. Because I think even the person going through treatment still wants to connect with others too.
Yeah. Well, and this is a step in connection too, because maybe somebody who hasn't had an experience with cancer in their family, or it's a new experience. I think that reading something like this can help people to realize that they're not alone in that step on their journey.
Yeah, definitely. When you sit down to receive chemotherapy, you can see many of the other patients in the room with you, and if you're a young survivor, a young person battling cancer, you definitely feel out of place. You often feel like, well, I don't look like anyone here, I'm not the same age. And so I feel like our online communities or books like this really help those young survivors connect back together.
Now we're just about out of time. So if you could, can you tell me where people can get a copy of the book?
So the website is www.surviveher.ca. You can find it on there, and all the proceeds to this book go right back into women's cancer research. So every copy you buy will help women like myself and the people in the book. So we have fewer stories to tell, hopefully.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah.
I'm Danica Lorer, and this is Lit Happens. You can find past episodes by going to Shaw TV Saskatoon on YouTube. You can find me on Facebook or Twitter, and if you have a story to tell, you can contact me at danicalorer@gmail.com.